Okay, it is 1 o'clock here in Sweden, so I think we will get started for today. Let's see here. First of all, I would like to say hello and welcome to this webinar. The topic of today's webinar is the International Application for Autumn 2023. My name is Cecilia. I work as an international office at our Division for Internationalization at Uppsala University. So essentially that means that I am part of the student recruitment team and I work with applicant support. So hopefully today will help you in your decision to apply to Uppsala University for next autumn. This is the agenda for today. First, I will do a brief introduction to Sweden and Uppsala University, the city of Uppsala. I will talk about the programs that we offer, both at the bachelor's and the master's level. I will talk about the application process and what our entry requirements are and how you can meet them. I will briefly touch upon scholarships and financial matters, since this is a very common question. And then we will hold a brief Q&A session. If we're unable, or if I am unable to answer your questions here today, you're more than welcome to send us an email. I see we already have some questions arriving in the Q&A box. Please save your questions for after the presentation, because I think I will touch upon many of the subjects that you're curious about. So please save your questions. Okay, let's get started. So Uppsala, what is Uppsala? It is the city that our university is named after. It is a small town, but with a big university. So the city of Uppsala has about 230,000 people, which makes it the fourth largest city in Sweden. Some of you may come from cities with millions of inhabitants, but in Sweden, our capital is Stockholm, and Uppsala is the fourth largest with 230,000. So that's probably very small compared to some of the countries and cities where you all live. Roughly 50,000 of the people who live in Uppsala are connected to the two universities in the city. So apart from Uppsala University, there is also an agricultural university that has a campus in the city of Uppsala. And because of the large number of students and staff, university staff that live in the city, the university is highly present in the city, and it makes the city a very student-friendly environment. There's a lot of culture, sports, and entertainment that is targeted specifically towards students. A lot of cafes and restaurants will have student discounts, and so on. It is a well-connected city. Sweden's capital, Stockholm, is about a 40-minute train ride away, and another 15-minute train ride to Sweden's largest airport, Arlanda. So if you're into traveling during your studies, Uppsala is a great choice for you. When it comes to campus areas, we don't have one central campus. Instead, our campus areas are spread out all over the city of Uppsala. We have 10 different campus areas in Uppsala, but then we also have one campus area on Gotland. And Gotland is an island in the Baltic Sea. The campus on Gotland used to be its own university college, but in 2013, it became part of Uppsala University. So almost 10 years together now. At Campus Gotland, 20 departments are represented with staff and students. So they have courses and programs that are offered on Gotland. There's also a center there, the Swedish International Center of Education for Sustainable Development. Gotland is located, as I mentioned, in the Baltic Sea, which makes it a very strategic trading post. So in the medieval times, Gotland was a trading center for trade between continental Europe and the rest of the Nordic countries. So there are a lot of medieval historical sites on Gotland. And the main city on Gotland is called Visby. which is also where our campus is located. And the central part of this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has a medieval wall that surrounds the old part of the city. You can see one of the towers here in the photograph in the presentation. And it's a very historical environment overall. We have 6 bachelor's programs and 6 master's programs that are offered on Gotland. And that includes sustainable management, game design, archaeology, and wind power project management. And many of the programs that are offered on Campus Gotland are related to sustainability or topics that have a sustainable focus. This is, of course, the case for many of the programs offered in Uppsala as well, but this is especially integral part when it comes to the programs offered on Gotland. At Uppsala University, we're very proud of our unique student life. We have 13 student nations, and the student nations are something that is fairly unique to Sweden, and especially the old student cities or university cities, Lund and Uppsala. They're like a student society or student club where you join a nation and they offer activities such as they have nightclubs, and they have bars, choirs, orchestras. It's sort of the student's second living room. So you go there to meet people who don't study the same thing as you do, but might have similar interests, or just to meet new people. We also have student unions, 6 of them to be precise. And as I mentioned, many of the activities and cultural activities and entertainment in the city of Uppsala are catered specifically towards students. There's, of course, also a lot of traditions to participate in, since our university was founded in 1477. When it comes to the Swedish classroom, it might be fairly different from what you're used to in your home country or in other academic contexts. So in Sweden, informality is very important also at universities, but also in society in general. For example, you can always expect to call your professors or lecturers by their first name. We don't address each other with titles in Sweden, it's always first name. And you can always expect to be treated as a peer or as an equal by your lecturers and peers and students, fellow students. We have a 40-hour study week, but not all of it is spent in the classroom. And this means that we expect students to spend 40 hours per week on their studies, but some of it may be in the form of independent studies. So you might not have lectures 40 hours per week, but there will be plenty of reading and study materials to go through that you then discuss in class with your fellow students and professors. It is also important when you study in Sweden that you're able to question your professors and fellow students. So it's not just about memorizing study materials and facts, it's about analyzing, reflecting, and discussing what you've learned. So a very common procedure is that you are assigned a reading or a certain number of pages in a book or a chapter. You read it, you reflect upon it, and then you have a seminar where you discuss it with your fellow students. And then that discussion or conversation is something that is graded, essentially, how you were able to analyze the material. If you study hard sciences or natural sciences, you will of course spend a lot of time in the lab and maybe not have as much independent studies. It varies a lot from what you study, but when it comes to the humanities and social science, this form of independent study where you do reading on your own and then discuss it with your peers is especially common. So when it comes to the programs that we offer, we have 6 bachelor's programs that are taught entirely in English, no Swedish language proficiency required. And as I mentioned, these programs are all offered on our Gotland campus. So there are no bachelor's programs in English that are offered in the city of Uppsala. And these are the 6 programs that we offer in English, and all other bachelor's programs at Uppsala University are taught in Swedish. And as you can see, the sustainability theme comes through in the topics of these bachelor's programs as well, as I mentioned before. When it comes to entry requirements for bachelor's studies, you need to have completed high school or upper secondary education. There are also program-specific entry requirements. For example, a program that is targeted more towards natural sciences may require additional courses in natural science. It can be quite hard to determine on your own whether you meet these program-specific entry requirements, but you are more than welcome to send us an email if you're not sure. We will have a look at your documentation and give a preliminary assessment. You also need to document English language proficiency, of course, if you're going to study in English. Most applicants do this using an internationally recognized test like TOEFL or IELTS. You need a TOEFL score of 90, IELTS score of 6.5. But in some cases, you can also meet the requirement through previous upper secondary studies, depending on where you have studied in the world. If you are in your final year of upper secondary school or final year of high school, you must wait and apply next year, because it's not possible to be conditionally admitted to a bachelor's program. You need to have completed upper secondary school to be eligible, and the application closes in January. Deadline for supporting documents 1st of February. And if you graduate in June, you won't be able to submit complete upper secondary documentation. So if you're in your final year, you must wait. Moving on to masters, we have more than 100 international master's programs taught entirely in English. I will not list them all here today, but you can see the faculties that offer master's programs in English in the presentation. We have a very large number of programs. They all have different entry requirements. So if you don't know what you're interested in, have a look through our catalog and see what catches your interest, and then take it from there and see if you may meet the program-specific entry requirements. Speaking of entry requirements, the general requirements for master's studies in Sweden are a bachelor's degree equivalent to a Swedish kandidatexamen, which is the Swedish name of a bachelor's, that is required for entry to master's programs. And that means different things depending on where you've studied. In certain countries, that means a 4-year degree. In other countries, it may mean a 3-year degree, but you need to check what applies to your specific country of study. Usually you need a degree in a subject that is relevant to the master's program that you're applying to. For example, if you're applying to a program in physics, you need to have studied physics during your bachelor's studies, because the purpose of a master's program in Sweden is to build upon your bachelor's studies. It's like a specialization or deeper dive into the subject that you started studying during your bachelor's. However, we have master's programs that have more general entry requirements that welcome students from any academic background. So if you're not sure, you can check the program catalog, send us an email, but be aware that if a certain number of credits in a certain subject is required, then that is very strict. The credit requirements are if you don't meet them, then you probably won't be able to be admitted to that specific program. English language skills, of course, you need to document English language proficiency for masters as well. And TOEFL and IELTS scores are the same as for bachelor's. If you've studied in English during your bachelor's studies, you may be able to meet the requirement through those studies. It depends a little bit on where you studied, what your documentation looks like. So if you're not sure, check the country specific requirements for your country of study or send us an email. If you are applying to our master's program in English, so the program in the English language, you need an even higher TOEFL score or IELTS score. So either 100 for TOEFL or 7.0 for IELTS. And that is because that program is just more challenging when it comes to the English language level. And usually you cannot meet the requirements for the master's program in English through previous university studies in English. You need the tests. And I just want to emphasize that the purpose of the English language requirements is to ensure that all of our students have appropriate English language level to manage their studies. If you do not meet the English language requirements, it means that our admissions officers assess that you will not be able to manage your studies in English. So that is the purpose of the English language requirement. It is not something that we set just because it's to ensure that everyone knows enough to manage their studies. If you are in your final year of bachelor studies, you are welcome to apply, but there is one extra document to submit. It's called a statement of enrollment status. And there's a form for that available on the university admissions website. And again, if you're not sure whether you meet the requirements, you can send us an email and we will assist you. If you have questions about the program specific requirements, so like, oh, I don't know if I have the appropriate number of credits in physics, or is my degree relevant to this program, then it's best to contact the program coordinator or study counselor directly, because the assessment of the program specific eligibility is made by the department offering the program. So if you contact us, if you email masterprograms@UU and ask, do I have enough credits in physics? We will most likely forward your question to the program coordinator. So you can go ahead and contact them directly yourself if you are curious about the program specific entry requirements. Moving on to the application. The application is done entirely online through a national application portal called University Admissions. And this is the same application system for all Swedish universities. When applying to masters, you can select up to 4 programs, and when applying to bachelors, up to 10 programs in the one application, and then you rank them in order of preference. You can only be admitted to one program, so it's very important that you are careful when ranking your program, because you'll be assessed for your highest priority first. Yes. Universityadmissions.se is also where you submit your supporting documents. Most documents can be just uploaded directly to the system, but sometimes certain transcripts or documents need to be sent in by post or using by email to university admissions. So always check first before you complete your application. The deadline for the application for autumn 2023 is 16th of January. And it's very important that you keep this deadline in mind, because any applications submitted after that date are late and only considered if there are spots left in the program after all on-time applicants have been offered admission. So your chances of being admitted will increase significantly just by submitting an on-time application. You then have until 1st of February for your supporting documents and application fee to be received if you are a fee-paying student. And admission results will be published on the 30th of March for masters and 5th of April for bachelors. And the admission results are published on your university admissions account. So on the morning of the 30th of March, for example, if you're applying to masters, you log into your account and you will find your admission results there. If you have questions about general eligibility, As I mentioned, you can send us an email, but you're also more than welcome to join our virtual drop-in with admissions officer Peter. This will take place next week, 15th of November at 10 Swedish time and 17th of November at 14 Swedish time. You can see the Zoom meeting ID in the presentation, but we will also send out a link to the Zoom room after this webinar is over. So you will receive a link as well. And there you can drop in and ask your questions directly to Peter. And you can see Peter here in the presentation as well. And he will do his best to answer your questions. But please be aware that he can answer questions about general eligibility and English language proficiency. If you have questions about program-specific credits, again, it's the program coordinator that is your best person to contact. Moving on to scholarships, Uppsala University has a number of scholarships that cover the full cost of tuition fee, but not living costs. That is something that is important to consider. It is essentially a tuition fee waiver. You don't receive a sum of money. Instead, you just don't pay the tuition fee. There's an online application for the scholarships. It is on our website, and you need to actively apply. You will not be automatically considered for a scholarship. You need to submit the actual application. The application for scholarships opens on the 17th of January and closes on the 1st of February. And it's very, very important that you apply on time because no late applications are accepted. Once at midnight on the 1st of February, the application form will close. The link will be removed from our website and it won't be possible to submit an application anymore. So very important that you consider the deadline. Selection is based on previous academic performance and demonstrating interest in belonging to an educational environment. So if you have got good grades during your bachelor's studies, your chances of receiving a scholarship are higher. And the results of the scholarship application are announced about the same time as the admission results. So usually you will receive an email on the same day as the admission results are published, saying whether you have been awarded a scholarship or not. We don't have any scholarships for EU or EEA citizens, as we do not have scholarships that cover living costs. As I mentioned, the scholarships that we offer, they only cover the tuition fee. EU citizens don't pay tuition fees in Sweden, and therefore we don't have scholarships for EU citizens. There are scholarships offered through, for example, the Swedish Institute. That is not something that we administer. So if you have questions about that, you're more than welcome to reach out directly to the Swedish Institute. Speaking of financial matters, I would just like to briefly touch upon the fact that citizens of non-EU or EEA countries pay application and tuition fees in Sweden, but all students, regardless of fee status, must be able to cover their personal living expenses while they are in Sweden. And that means rent, clothing, food, transportation, study materials, etc. Sweden is an expensive country, and that is very important to consider when planning your studies. You may have to count on having to pay a lot more for certain things in Sweden than you would in your home country. Cost of living in Sweden is approximately 10,000 Swedish krona per month. That is a minimum. Of course, living costs depend on your personal lifestyle, but this is an approximation. If you are a non-EU or EEA citizen, you must apply for a residence permit for studies to study in Sweden. And part of that application is showing the Swedish Migration Agency that you have money to support yourself during your studies. And that means money in a bank account. You cannot, show documentation saying that my parents will support me or I have a relative sponsoring me. No, you need to have actual money in an actual bank account that is in your name. And this is very important. And we usually get a lot of questions about part-time jobs, finding jobs, extra jobs. Can I get a job to cover my expenses? And the answer is usually no. Do not count on finding a job in Sweden to cover your expenses, because it's very difficult to find a job here if you don't speak the Swedish language. Especially in cities like Uppsala and also Visby, there are a lot of international students, and the competition for any jobs that don't require Swedish is very, very fierce. So don't count on finding a job to cover your expenses. And with that being said, I would just like to sum up by saying that you are more than welcome to follow our current students along on their journeys as international students in Sweden. We have a blog called Tagged for Uppsala, where our student ambassadors blog about their lives as international students. Here you can see 2 examples of blog posts that have been written by our ambassadors. And we also have an Instagram account called Study@UU, where our ambassadors post about their lives as international students. Yes, and just like to end off by saying I hope that I will get to see you all at Uppsala University next year, and best of luck with your applications. And you can see a link to our website that contains a lot of useful practical information, both about applying, but also life as a student at Uppsala University. Our email addresses, our Instagram account, and our blog. And I think we will move on to Q&A now. So let's see, there a lot of questions have come in during my presentation. Let's see here. It's possible to upvote questions. So if you see a question, if you have a question that somebody else has already posted, you can just upvote that question, and I will see that many people are wondering the same thing. I'll be able to answer that one specifically. Let's see here. I will sort on most upvotes. So the questions that I answer are the ones that most people are wondering about. Question from, let's see here, from Rodrigo. Can I apply for the university scholarship and the Swedish Institute scholarship? Yes, you can. You can apply for both. They are completely separate applications with separate application deadlines. So that is important to consider. But yes, you can apply for both. And if you are selected for both, you will have to choose which scholarship you want to receive. If it were me, I would choose the Swedish Institute one because it's more generous. You know, it covers living costs as well, but that is up to you. But you can't receive both. You need to pick one if you're selected for both. Okay. A question about housing from Udipta. Is there any provision of student housing, or could you discuss a little bit about student housing? And yes, of course. The university doesn't have its own student accommodation. So in many other countries, you know, you apply for housing, like it's part of the university. Here we have a housing office that we cooperate with, and they have a bunch of rooms and small apartments that are specifically for international students. We have a housing guarantee for fee-paying students, which means that if you are a fee-paying student, we will guarantee that you will receive a housing offer that is an offer for a contract. And then you sign the contract, and then you are responsible for paying rent every month. If you are an EU citizen, that is a citizen that isn't a person that isn't paying tuition fee to the university, then you are responsible for finding housing on your own. This can be a quite challenging process, but most of our students manage just fine. So you need to be aware that finding housing, it can take a little work, and it's something that you'll need to spend some time on, but it usually works out just fine. But if you're a fee-paying student, we guarantee that you will receive a housing offer through the Uppsala University Housing Office. I hope that answered your question, Udipta. Another question here, is there a way to know how competitive a particular master's program in Uppsala is? I mean, yes and no. The selection criteria for each program are listed on the program website. Usually it's like an appraisal of your previous studies and a statement of purpose or professional experience, you know, like what does the program coordinator look at when selecting students? We do have statistics for each specific program. So if you want to know, you can send us an email and we'll do our best to summarize that for you. But to say what your personal chances are, that's impossible because that depends on the quality of your application, the quality of all the other applications, how many applications we receive. Like once the deadline has passed, how many applications did we receive? How many spots are available? You know, it's a combination of many different factors. So we can't say what your chances are, but we can say how many were admitted last year. Okay. Do you need the English language requirements if you are English and have studied in English your whole life? Well, you still need to show that you meet the requirement because, yeah, the requirements are what they are. You need to show that you meet the requirements. And if you are English, then you probably went to school in English, studied in English in upper secondary school, or maybe during your bachelor's, and then you may be able to meet the requirement through your previous studies. But just the fact that you hold a passport from an English-speaking country, that doesn't meet the requirement. You need to show that you have studied in English. So yes, but you can send us an email and Peter will look at your personal, not circumstances, but your academic, yeah, your past studies and say whether you meet the requirements. A similar question here from Daisy. I'm a native speaker. What kind of proof do I need to submit for English proficiency? And that depends on where you've studied. So certain countries, certain English-speaking countries, upper secondary documentation. Other maybe bachelor's documentation, but it depends on the country. So check the country-specific requirements for where you studied. And move from, proceed from there. Let's see here. A question from Ahmed. I'm applying for the master's in game design. The university webpage tells me that I need to show my portfolio as well as a motivation letter. Do I upload them on university admissions or mail them to the university? If we start with that question. For the program-specific documentation, if there are no specific instructions in regards to send them to this email address, then you are supposed to upload it to your account. So if there are no, if it doesn't explicitly say this is the procedure, then you just upload it. Yes. Second, is the total number of scholarship offered in general, or are they divided based on the degree program? Well, we have 3 different scholarships with different criteria. Some are divided based on each faculty are assigned a certain number of scholarships, but then other are just, best applicants regardless. So it depends on which scholarship you're applying to. Yes. A question from Aruna. I already have a master's in computer science. Can I apply for a second master's? Yes, Yes, you can. Should I do the IELTS or TOEFL? I cannot say yes or no. You can check the country-specific requirements for your country of study, or you can just send us an email and Peter will take a look. Or you can join the drop-in next week and ask Peter directly. A question regarding upper secondary documentation. Should I upload my secondary and higher secondary certificate in universityadmissions.se? That depends on what you are applying to. If you're applying to a bachelor's program, yes, absolutely. That is what your eligibility is based on. If you're applying to a master's program, it depends on whether you are hoping to meet the English language requirement through your upper secondary studies, or if you, yeah, it depends on what you're applying to. A question from Ivani. Based on the information I saw on the website, there's no additional personal statement or motivation letter required for the university scholarship. Is that correct? And when the scholarship application opens, there will be a field in the application that is like motivation, like writing why you are a good candidate for the scholarship. So yes, that will be part of the scholarship application. You will need to write, like motivate why you are a good candidate for the scholarship. But that is done directly into the application form. Let's see here. A lot of questions coming in. I will try to answer as many as possible, but I can see that I have more than 100. So again, if you can see that somebody has already asked a question that you were about to ask, you can just upvote the existing question and I will know that many of you have the same question. I am a Nigerian and I applied for a bachelor's degree program. I want to know if my secondary education certificate can serve in place of TOEFL. That is a question best asked to Peter. He will be able to say without a doubt whether you can or cannot. But it also says on the country-specific page for Nigeria. So just check universityadmissions.se to see whether Nigerian upper secondary studies meet the requirements or not. Cedric wants to know, how much money do I have to present for financial capability? So as I mentioned during the presentation, approximately 10,000 Swedish krona per month of study. Yes, and you apply so that is for the residence permit application. So if you're applying for a permit for 1 year, that's approximately 10,000 times 12, so 120,000 Swedish krona. And you need that in a bank account, and the bank account has to be in your name. No sponsors, no parents saying, yes, we will support our son or daughter. It has to be in your bank account in your name. And the purpose then is for the money to remain in that account during your studies and to be used for your personal expenses. A second question from Udikta. What kind of assistance is giving regarding job search? We have career counselors at the university, or we have study and career counselors that can assist with things. Well, they offer a lot of workshops, lectures, seminars about looking for jobs, but they also offer CV counseling and like going through your personal letter when applying for jobs. So it's either, you can attend lectures and seminars, or you can schedule a one-on-one session with a career counselor. And that is primarily if you're looking for a job in Sweden, because they're obviously experts on the Swedish job market. But we have career support both at the central level, so career counselors who help everyone regardless of what they study, but then each program also has a study counselor that can usually offer advice and assistance when it comes to looking for a job in Sweden. or internationally, depending on your field of study. Can you explain the requirement of doing GMAT? Deshani wants to know. And yes, we have a select number of programs in business studies that base part of their selection on GMAT test results. And for those programs, it's business and management, accounting and financial management, and I believe it is also sustainable management. And if you submit GMAT test results to your application, you have priority to that program. So it's possible to be admitted without GMAT. You can still meet the requirements, but your chances of being admitted will increase if you submit GMAT test results. So yes, if you're applying to one of our programs that asks for GMAT, your chances will increase if you submit GMAT test results. But it's possible to be admitted without it, but less likely. We have a question from Kai or Kay. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Thank you for doing this presentation. Well, you're welcome. Thank you for attending. 2 questions. After reading through the appeals form for the statement of enrollment, my understanding is that I have to make a short case as to why an exception should be made for the university to grant me a conditional acceptance were I to maintain a certain level of academic performance. That question is a little too specific for me to answer. I think it's better if Peter answers that question. So if you could please send this to us via email, I would appreciate that, because then Peter will be able to answer. And regarding your second question, is there a limit to how many recommendation letters I can submit? No limit, but just be aware if they're not specifically requested by the program, it's not sure that they will consider them. Because, as I mentioned, each program has a very specific, like they list the selection criteria on the program website. And apart from those criteria, they're not really allowed to take anything else into consideration. So if it just says a statement of purpose, then that's the only document they'll consider for the selection, essentially. But you're more than welcome to submit recommendation letters if you have them. You can upload them to your university admissions account. A question from Nargis. Are there any application fee waivers? No, we are not able to waive the application fee. A question from Alexander. I am already studying in Sweden for a master's degree, but I've lost interest in the course I'm doing. Can I apply for a more suitable course while still being admitted? Yes, of course. Alexander, you're welcome to apply. Go ahead. Yes, no problem at all. Let's see where we are time-wise. I will answer a few more questions, and then I think we have to wrap things up for today. A question from Adedayo. I have a polytechnic education before a 3-year bachelor program. Do I need to upload transcripts of both institutions? And my recommendation would be yes, upload everything that you have. Yes. An anonymous question. If a person receives their EU citizenship at any point before or during their studies, can they switch to not paying tuition for the remainder of their studies? Yes, of course, absolutely. Just submit your EU passport and we will change your status. No problem. A question from Lawrence. In terms of accommodation, is it possible to sort out your accommodation in your home country before traveling to Sweden, or will you sort it out as soon as you arrive? How does it work? Well, if you are a fee-paying student, so a student from a non-EU country, you receive an application form for the housing application via email sometime in May. You fill out the application. Our housing office sends you an offer. You accept the offer, sign the contract, and then when you arrive in August, there's a room waiting for you. That's the process for fee-paying students. For non-fee-paying students looking for housing on their own, it depends on what you prefer. If you prefer to have everything arranged before coming, or if you prefer to travel here and then, start looking after you've arrived, that's up to you. But for fee-paying students who are guaranteed a housing offer, everything is taken care of before you come here. Another question from Udipta. How much time are we given to accept the offer? Do we need to deposit an amount to reserve the admission spot? Yes, so admission results, as I mentioned, they are published 30th of March for masters. You will receive an invoice for the first semester's tuition fee a couple of weeks after that. And then you have approximately 30 days to pay the first semester's tuition fee. And you need to pay that tuition fee to be able to apply for a residence permit, get housing, all other practicalities. So you essentially have about a month after admission results to decide and to pay the first semester's tuition fee. If you are a non-fee paying student, then there's no deadline, essentially. Do my documents need to be legalized by the Swedish embassy before uploading? No, they do not. I think we will finish off with one final question here that I think many of you probably have. Just a second. From Sean. I understand that it is difficult to find a job in Sweden. Whoops, sorry, it disappeared. I understand that it is difficult to find a job in Sweden, but is there opportunities in Uppsala to work as a research assistant or as a tutor in the university in English? Some departments may employ exceptionally talented students for research project or being a tutor or similar, but this is not common. It is not common practice as in many other countries that you have like work study or that every course has a tutor. No, that's not the case. This is pretty uncommon and definitely not something that you should count on. So no, don't, in general, no, there are no opportunities to work as a research assistant or a tutor in the university. It happens, but very uncommon. And I think that has to be our final question for today. I see there are so many questions pouring in. I'm very glad that you are all curious about Uppsala University and the programs that we offer and applying. But I think we have to wrap things up for today. You have our email addresses on the screen. If you follow us on Instagram, you can also interact with our current students and write to them via DM. They're usually quick to reply and they have, Q&A sessions where you can post your questions. But yes, just send us an email. We'll do our best to help you. And you will all receive a recording of this webinar probably tomorrow. So if you want to watch the presentation again, you can do so. So with that said, thank you all for joining today. I hope that I get to welcome you all to Uppsala University next fall. And yeah, best of luck with your applications. Bye.